And a good morning to you. Welcome to Community Voices. I am your host, Ron Holland. Perhaps one of the most emotionally fraught moments in the life of an expected mother is to lose a child during birth. As our nation's women grapple with the loss of reproductive freedoms and the ability to make decisions about their body, the peril of childbirth has an added burden on women as uncertainty hovers over the moments of birth. To be frank, a crisis exists with stillbirths and Black maternal health, and we're going to talk about this issue with my esteemed guest. Joining me via telephone this morning is Congresswoman Adams, representative of the 12th Congressional District here in North Carolina. Congresswoman Adams has represented the 12th Congressional District for the last 14 years and is the sponsor of a host of critical bills relating to wages, equal pay, bills to address mental health, justice for Black farmers, funding for historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Representative Adams, it is indeed an honor and pleasure having you on the show this morning.
Great, Ron. It's good to talk to you. It's good to be with you, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Before we delve into the Stillbirth Prevention Act, which was signed into law by President Biden, I'd like to get your thoughts on the historic moment we are all in regarding Vice President Kamala Harris's run for the White House. And of course, as you know, Vice President Harris has picked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that she does have her running mate intact. I believe that she's going to be a wonderful president, and of course, it looks like it's a good team. His background, I think, is going to complement hers, and I think they're off to a good start.
Absolutely. If elected, not only will she be the first Black woman, first Indian woman to be elected president, she will have shattered the sturdiest of ceilings. What will her win signal to our country in general and to young girls, particularly young Black girls?
Well, first of all, I think it is historic, and it's going to send a clear message to our young people, especially young girls, that you can do whatever you want to do if you try to do those things you can do. And certainly she is an example that we can look up to. And know that when we see her, we know that these young girls can see themselves.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into this issue, because I think it's a very important. You know, I have a beautiful wife and I have a daughter. And so these issues are critically important to women. But like so many Americans, I didn't fully appreciate the magnitude of the issue of stillbirths in this country. The numbers are startling. And to be quite frank, I don't think the average American pays attention to this issue unless they are personally touched. And the adage out of sight, out of mind applies to this crisis. Your thoughts about stillbirths in this country, ma'am?
Well, let me first of all, you are exactly right, Ron. So many people don't know what they don't know, and they're very surprised when they learn that the stillbirths in the United States, there are about 21,000 every year. North Carolina in 2022, there were a little over 700. And so what we're trying to do is to educate, first of all, the public, but also to give a funding pool to make sure that organizations that want to educate women about stillbirths and how they can be preventable will have an opportunity to do that. That's what H.R. 4581 will do. The Stillbirth Prevention Act and Black maternal health will give folks an opportunity to clarify, first of all, that the Title V funds for research-based programs to prevent stillbirth, those funds can be used. It's the largest funding pool that exists for maternal and child health issues in the United States. So we've come a long way. We're excited that the bill has passed. The president has signed it into law. And so we're off to a good start there.
Absolutely. And I should let folks understand this. This is really important. Stillbirth rate for women in their 40s is 2 to 3 times the rate of women in their 20s and their 30s. So those are disconcerting numbers in my judgment.
Well, you're exactly right. They are. But when you think about the 1 in 4 stillbirths are being estimated to be preventable. And that's what we want to do. And, of course, you can't prevent if you don't educate. And so there's been a historic underinvestment in addressing this. We call it a silent crisis, and it has been because, as you said, people don't know about it. And they need to know about it so that women can take better care of themselves and in the end, have a good birth. That's what we always look for, to make sure that the mother and the child is cared for.
Absolutely. And I want to continually use this word crisis because North Carolina is the second highest stillbirth rate in the United States. And I wonder your thoughts because, again, keeping it in the level or at least in the area of crisis, when expectant mothers are forced to grapple with losing a child during birth, the mental anguish in the wake of this devastation can last for years, starting with anxiety, ultimately depression sets in, lasting upward of 4 years. Your thoughts about that, because women are really forced to dwell on that particular loss of a child, and it can cause some very extreme mental anguish.
Well, you're exactly right, but I just want to add that whatever happens to women in terms of these situations impacts the family. It impacts the father. So it is a sensitive subject. And so we're trying to make sure that we respond in a way that's respectable. But I've met a lot of advocates who have shared these stories. They're pretty traumatic. And I was able to really get involved with this issue. But, in terms of the pain that these families feel, not only the families, but the mother, as you said, it can take an emotional toll. And we want to make sure that women are prepared, that families are prepared. And I want to, as a member of Congress, to use my position to make sure that it does not remain the norm for American families and black families more specifically. Because when you look at the numbers, black families are impacted, or black women to a greater extent.
Absolutely. And the impact, particularly on the business community, when you think about 1 in 6 women experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of this, then when you talk about their inability to work, to function, particularly at work, productivity declines at least by 63%. So talk a little bit about the impact of this on the business community.
Well, you're exactly right. Listen, if you're a working mom, you're going through this crisis, you're not going to do your best work. So you're talking about not only is it impacting you personally, but yes, those businesses, you're probably going to be out of work for a while. And so it is going to impact, what happens to women doesn't just impact them personally. It impacts everything around them, their families, where they work, who they work with. All of those things are interchangeable.
As I was preparing for the show, I was thinking about gestational diabetes and prenatal care. The information is available, but it seems as if the information is not being absorbed by a lot of women, particularly around prenatal care, because as you've mentioned earlier, some of this is preventable. So talk a little bit about the best practices for those of you who are in Congress, those of us who are on the ground, particularly women, who need the educational material and what your bill offers to them with regard to education.
Well, first of all, I was an educator for 40 years. So education has been my pathway, and I try to make sure that as a member of Congress, I use the experience, the education, the expertise that I have to share with my colleagues, because, we don't always know what we don't know. And I think it's important. The education piece is really important. And so as we are not only members of Congress and trying to educate each other, getting legislation passed, hopefully that legislation will resonate in the community so that the organization working in this field will be able to serve the families that they're working with a lot better. And oftentimes they need the resources to do that. And that's why we pass legislation to help the people who are on the ground, because those who are on the ground are the ones who are closest to the issue. But we have to, as members, provide the support for them, whether that support is financial or otherwise in terms of resources. So it is something that we're working on and should be working on all the time.
You kind of hinted around this a little earlier during the interview, and I want to kind of give you an opportunity to kind of build on it. And the question is, was there a singular individual or a story that moved you personally to sit down and get this bill written and get it through the process of legislation and, of course, get it signed by President Biden? I'm wondering the process that occurred and what led you to these moments.
Well, let me just say, Ron, that many things that we do in Congress come to us because we are personally impacted. I have been working with advocates in this area of health. It's one of my H's that I work on for a long time. So when you listen to these stories resonate with you to the point that you really want to do something about it. As I look at Black maternal health overall, I co-founded, along with my colleague in Illinois, Representative Underwood, the Black Maternal Health Caucus, because there was a personal situation with me and my daughter who almost became a victim of this crisis, and my granddaughter, we almost lost both of them. My granddaughter's 18 now, just turned 18, and she's going to college this year in North Carolina A&T. But so I hear these stories too often from Black women, whether it's about having lost a child, whether it's about the concerns about that they might lose a child. And so these are things that, I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother, soon to be a great-grandmother, and so these are things that personally impact me. But I think as I meet with women and families and even the fathers of children, those are the things that really resonate with me to the point that I want to work on legislation to help solve some, because these things are preventable. And things that are preventable, I think we really need to get in front of it so that we don't have these deaths, so that we don't have these situations occurring, so that we do educate women and families about things that they can do to have a better quality of life.
And for our listeners, 44 deaths per 100,000 live births compared to 17.9. And Black women, what's interesting to me, the maternal death rate for Black women is more than double that of white women. What would you say to women at childbearing years who still have this cavalier attitude toward these kinds of issues relating to diabetes and hypertension and all those other kind of things that actually can cause a stillbirth? If they, not as if they don't care, but it's like, okay, this is not going to impact me, so I'm not even going to worry about prenatal care. I'm not going to take care of, I'm not going to look at my health in terms of diabetes and hypertension. What would you say to those women?
Well, I would say to those women, listen, you're certainly not immune to any of that.
Yeah.
And it can happen to you, and you do need to take your health seriously. And if you're talking about having a child, you want to make sure that you're in the best possible, that you have the best possible health that you can have, that will then resonate into having a healthy child. And so you should be concerned about your blood pressure, your diabetes. And so I'm a diabetic myself, and I have to kind of look at that in terms of everything that I do. So we can't be cavalier about it. We can't dismiss it, and let's not wait until it happens. Let's prevent it from happening. And the way to do that is to be educated about what you should and should not be doing as it relates to your diet and your health overall.
Absolutely. As I was preparing for the show, Representative Adams, I read this story that really stuck to me, and it talked about an instance of what they called incompetent cervix, and it led to the need to abort a fetus, but Texas law prevented the procedure because of its ban on abortion. Eventually, the baby in this case was stillborn, which caused trauma to the mother, the father, and the family. And given the extreme medical emergency in these given situations, it's apparent that there is a nexus between the complication of stillbirths and miscarriages and the potential procedure to abort a fetus because of either a risk to the mother or to the fetus, because that fetus may not survive outside the womb. Talk a little bit about that, ma'am.
Well, certainly that happens, and I think we're talking about a life or death situation.
Yeah.
There should be no question in my mind about saving the life of the mother. And of course, that is a very painful decision that the mother and the father has to make. And so we do have the maternal death rates increasing because when they're in these situations, you have situations where medical folks, where doctors don't want to do what they know that they probably should do because they don't want to lose their license and that kind of thing. So it's really unacceptable. But I do think that we have to make sure that women understand, the mothers understand their rights, and that they speak up for themselves.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we try to do with the momnibus and the many bills that we have there, to make sure that women understand that they have to be advocates for themselves as well. There are other people who can, they're doulas and that can help. But they really have to decide when they're faced with these decisions. Like I said, it's really a life or death decision. And I don't think the government needs to be involved in that. So, I was really distressed when the Supreme Court did what it did. But it is something, this whole issue of maternal health and miscarriages, stillbirths, and all those things, they occur. They'll probably continue to occur. But we have to be prepared and help women be prepared about how they should proceed.
Absolutely. We're coming up toward the end of the broadcast, but I do want to give you an opportunity to speak directly to those women here in North Carolina, particularly your district, because at the end of the day, these are the people that you serve here in North Carolina. So for those women who are in your district particularly, what's your closing argument to them with regard to this particular issue and other issues relating to their maternal health?
Well, I just want to say particularly to the women of color, black women, other women of color, that mamas, you matter. Your health matters. Understanding the dilemma that may be before you, understanding what happens with stillbirth, understanding that a lot of these things that happen are preventable. But you have to be on top of it, understanding your body, understanding what rights you have, and being able to advocate for yourself. This is a silent crisis, but it's not a crisis that we cannot deal with. So we should not be, as black women, women of color, twice as likely to experience stillbirth. We should not be, as black women, 3 and 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. And so we have to come together as a community and think a lot about ourselves and what we can do to protect ourselves and our families, and most especially those children.
Congresswoman Adams, we're about to close, but I would like for you, because, I've been following you for quite a while. I'm a transplant from Jersey, so I've been down here since since 2005. And of course, my being here at the radio station, we're sort of required to follow who's doing what in the community. But your name rings out with regard to HBCU funding. And I would be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to sort of clarify some things, because you played a major role across several administrations to ensure that historically black colleges and universities receive funding for a host of priorities. And people are kind of confused about the real hero in the HBCU funding story. So give our listeners an opportunity to know what you've done with regard to this area.
Well, let me first of all thank you for asking that question, because, so often when you work on legislation, other folks try to steal it. But let me just say that I am HBCU strong. HBCUs helped me to get to where I am today, North Carolina A&T State University. I represent an HBCU right here in Charlotte, JCSU. But the bill that you hear people talking about, and they don't even know the name of it, is the Future Act. Mm-hmm. And I got that bill passed in 2019. And what it does is provide $255 million to MSIs and HBCUs, with $85 million of those dollars going to HBCUs. That is a bill that we were about to lose money for HBCUs under the presidency of the last president that we had, and who did not put any money in the budget for any new money at all for HBCUs. And this money was about to expire. And it was because I introduced the Future Act. And it is about the future. And so Alma Adams' name is on that bill. It was a House bill. And the record is clear. And you can check the data. But I'm going to continue to work. Right now, I'm working on a bill called the IGNITE, which stands for Institutional Grants, New Infrastructure, Technology, and Education for HBCUs and MSIs. And we're hoping to move that because infrastructure is a serious problem on HBCU campuses. We're almost 200 years old, and some of our buildings are as old as our schools. So we've got to do something about that. Our students deserve the best, and we're going to make sure that they get it.
Absolutely. Representative Adams, we only have about 30 seconds in the show. Where should our listeners go for additional information on the work that you're doing regarding Stillbirth Prevention Act and Black maternal health crisis in America, or the work that you're doing in your congressional district?
All right. They can go to adams.house.gov, or they can go to my congressional website, and all of the information about what we're doing is there. Or you can reach out to my office in Washington, 202 area code 225-1510. Or my local office here in Charlotte is on David Taylor Drive, and you can give us a call here as well. That number is area code 704-344-9950. And we'll be happy to take care of you. If you need any services as it relates to any of the federal government, if you're having issues, whether it's with the VA, whether it's with Social Security, whether it's Medicare, immigration, if you need a passport, all of those things my office can help you with, including Medicare. So we will also assist you with tours if you need a tour in the U.S. Capitol to the White House when you visit Washington. Again, just give us a call, area code 704-344-9950, or visit my website, adams.house.gov.
All right, Congresswoman Alma Adams, representative of the 12th Congressional District here in North Carolina. Thank you again for joining me this morning. It indeed was a privilege and an honor.
Thank you, Ron. It's been good talking to you and sharing information with the community. It's so important. Knowledge is power.
Amen.
And power is what makes the difference in lives and communities.
Amen. Absolutely. Thank you so much, ma'am. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'll wrap up the show. This is Community Voices with your host, Ron Holland. We'll be back in a moment. And welcome back to Community Voices. I'm your host, Ron Holland. I want to again thank Congresswoman Alma Adams, representative of the 12th Congressional District here in North Carolina, for coming on to talk about the enormously important work of helping to prevent stillbirths as well as tackling the Black maternal health crisis. For additional information about Congresswoman Alma Adams and her work in Congress, especially her legislative efforts, log on to www.adams.house.gov. Listen, if you have any comments on today's show, please send me an email, ronholland@radio-1.com or ronholland25@yahoo.com. You can also catch me on Facebook, Instagram, Fanbase, and TikTok. It's Ron Holland across all 4 social media platforms. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's Community Voices. I'm your host, Ron Holland. We'll talk with you next week.